what got you into the renewable energy sector?
Sure. Yeah, well, first off, thanks very much for having me on here. Appreciate the opportunity to hear about the work that you do, as well as talk a little bit about mine. As you said, yeah, I'm certainly a clean energy advocate and have been sort of working in this space for the last 8 years or so. Yeah, I went to Arizona State University in the United States, and I took a program in material science engineering. And that's a very broad term. You know, materials are used in quite literally everything.
Right.
And that was kind of the thought behind why I chose that program specifically, because I didn't know what I wanted to do in terms of what I wanted to study. I'll actually rewind a little bit, and there is a bit of a connection with Africa that was sort of the inspiration for that, choosing material science. In 2007, I was very lucky to get to travel to South Africa and spent a bit of time in the Cape Town area, Pretoria, Durban, and then also a bit of time up in Johannesburg as well, where, you know, the beautiful national park is, Kruger National Park is there. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to travel there. It was with a humanitarian group, and we were helping out with some of the refugee camps. You know, there was a lot of refugees coming out of Zimbabwe into South Africa, seeking shelter, new opportunities, new life. And interacting, man, I saw the most amount of joy that I have ever seen in you know, certain populations, and how welcoming those people were, and you know, opening their doors to us and allowing us to come in, chat with them, and hear about what their needs are. And the three themes that I heard were access to energy, access to clean water, and access to medical supplies. And that was a very sharp contrast with my own background. I was an immigrant to the United States as well. My parents worked really hard, got us over there, and I lived a very privileged life, having grown up in the area that I did. And so it was a very sharp contrast to see those three distinct needs. And so that drove my desire to get into a field of engineering where I could tackle one of or several of those three areas. And with materials engineering, material science, I was able to kind of explore each of those aspects. And so with the water purification research I got into at first, using materials on how to purify water in more energy efficient and cost-effective ways. I moved out of that as the research projects I was on didn't really align with my longer-term visions, and I stumbled into a solar energy research program. And so that was a connection back in 2012 or so. So 5 years after sort of starting that journey, meeting the people in South Africa in those areas. And ever since then, I've been more on the academic side, doing research and development, engineering research for solar energy materials. Within the last 2 years or so, I graduated with my PhD in material science for solar energy materials. And I wanted to go broader scope and say, like, for me, looking at the future isn't only solar energy. You know, you've already brought it up, hydropower, battery storage. There's a whole mix of things that are going to be incredibly relevant. And while I am a huge fan of solar energy, I'm not saying that's, you know, it's 100%, that's the only thing. Right. We need a mix, and we need a lot of brilliant minds coming together, a lot of individuals that are doing the R&D work, a lot of individuals that are doing the actual groundwork, such as yourself, getting those systems onto rooftops, out into fields, providing homes with clean energy and economical energy as well. It's not only about the carbon as well. So
coming back to Nigeria, I really got a reintroduction to having constant blackouts, having water outages, and the whole 9 yards. And fortunately, I've been able to connect with like minds who want to see a progress or see a problem in particular areas and working towards gaining or implementing a localized solution. Because, you know, when it comes to this type of issues, what might work in America, what might work in Europe, needs to be localized more for the African market, the African individual, the African economy, as you rightfully put it. Lots of countries are looking to switch over to clean energy by 2030. So what do you see the future for implementation of renewable energy solutions for the world, or rather, to be more precise, for Africa? Do you think Africa is better positioned since it has so much or lack of constant energy? Do we have a better position to actually put in those infrastructures in place on renewable energy solutions, as opposed to other countries who are looking to switch over from the conventional energy generation systems to more renewable energy systems? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. So some of the slowest movers in this energy transition in, you know, as you were mentioning, Europe and the United States, are these massive utility players that have built infrastructure over the last 5 decades or so, 6 decades or more, with coal power, with their oil and gas pipelines, with nuclear power. I don't, it will be very difficult for them to bring those offline and shift into this new paradigm of renewable energies. So yeah, just to give a little context to that, what I mean, when you start including a lot more renewables onto your grid, you're going to start hearing this term intermittent power a lot. So I don't like that term because, you know, a lot of people are using that as a negative. What I like to say is variable generation power instead. You can say it's semantics. You can say that those words mean the same thing, intermittent versus variable generation. But I think it's a mindset change. So what we're used to in some of these places that have built up a lot of infrastructure is you have a nuclear power plant, you have a coal power plant that's putting out a constant amount of power. So that's your base load of power. And you have to maintain that. It's too expensive and it's too difficult to turn it off and turn it back on. Now, why would you want to turn it off and turn it back on? Because people are consuming energy at different times of the day. You know, in the middle of the day, a lot of people, if you're at work or something, your home is not using a lot of electricity or a lot of power. You go home in the evening, and if it's super hot, you want to turn up that air conditioning if you have that. You want to boil some water to make yourself some tea or something like that, and you're going to increase that amount of energy. And what you can't do is ramp up and ramp down your base load power easily. And so we've had to come up with a lot of different ways to aggregate load, aggregate electricity usage together on national levels to fit how these power generation sources work. Now, when you have solar panels and when you have wind turbines that generate variably, as it were, you have a cloud passing over, or you have, you know, sunrise in the morning, sunset in the evening, different wind amounts during the different parts of the day, you're going to start seeing these peaks and different loads coming in. And we absolutely have the ability to match that generation peak and low with the demand peak and low. You can start shifting loads around. Of course, batteries are one way to do that. You can generate the power, store it, and then use it when you need it. And so with going to your comment about is Africa in a good position because it doesn't have the infrastructure, I absolutely think so. A lot of the renewable technology, when you look at it on a dollar per watt or cents per watt, and by watt, I mean the actual electricity amount that you're using, they are so much cheaper than the traditional forms of energy. And so we're going to start seeing a shift towards that. And if you don't have to work with things that are already pre-built, and instead you can say, hey, we know we are going to be a very solar dominant power grid, you can start building up your infrastructure to meet those variable generation needs. So I absolutely think that is an opportunity more than a hindrance. It will be difficult because these utility companies that have existed, they do have a lot of expertise when it comes to how do you handle power in terms of the actual cabling and the lines and sensor data and knowing how to deal with large data and drops and fluctuations. Like that expertise, the operational expertise, that is something that's difficult to make up for. But as the technology comes out, hopefully the education can come with it as well.
And that's wow. That's a great segue into something else I wanted to also touch about, the education aspect, and actually getting both those who would be offering the solutions and those who would actually be using it to become more educated on, how to effectively utilize this resource. We have, in Nigeria, there are a few companies offering solar energy solutions, both in the micro scale and in the macro scale. And so you can go to a little shop owner and who pretty much every household in the country has a generator set. Almost every household needs one due to our intermittent power supply or blackouts. So now those generator sets, sure, it gives you energy when you need it. Of course, it adds to also your CO2 contribution and noise pollution and the whole 9 yards. However, the major issue there is the cost of the fuel and the maintenance of a generator set. So when I talk to them about, okay, how about switching over to solar panels, a little small inverter box and whatnot to cut your costs and pay off for itself in the long term, a lot of people aren't really educated in that aspect of, okay, what are the benefits to solar? How much megawatts, or how much solar energy do I need for my utilities and my appliances? And so there's that learning curve that we, especially, I'll use Nigeria as a more viable example, that we need to impact into the society. And I feel that is where people like myself, like my company, and also others in the space, like yourself in your area, well, I'm sure people are more receptive or understanding of solar solutions. I hope they are.
Not always. No, not at all. Not always. So yeah.
So that's a huge curve in learning there, and why I feel it's really, really important, and not just for those who are using it, but also those who will be offering the maintenance services, because it's one thing to have it installed, it's another thing to maintain it. And I've spoken with a few companies here who are doing some great jobs in training people. It's also creating another small industry to enable people to have job creation, which is another thing that our company is working on. We started the Build Green Challenge, and the Build Green Challenge, the summary behind the Build Green Challenge is for people, entrepreneurs, engineers, whatever, any creative mind in this sphere, to come up with localized solutions for everyday issues here in Nigeria. So the localized solutions would definitely be things that we can implement into our ongoing estate development. Like you said, during the peak periods, which tends to be mostly in the evening when people are coming back from work, and also in the early morning time when people are getting ready to go to work, those are when consumption levels go up, goes high, and then that's when the sun is not out yet. So you need to start looking at your storage unit, the capacity of your storage units in order to meet up to that demand. And I feel that it's great when we can have micro scales. We don't have to look at micro grids rather to supply particular areas in the micro scale and move up from there. What we're doing is we're showcasing people around the world who are also in this realm for us to share our knowledge and also tap into their knowledge as well, and see how we can tackle this global existential problem that we have of both energy supply and also, let's say, global warming, which is affecting pretty much the whole world. I don't know.
Me? Yeah.
We're back on.
Cool. Okay, good. Yeah. So I'm working at the University of Twente in the Netherlands for a group called the Center for Energy Innovation. And I was saying, the word innovation is everywhere nowadays, so I guess they had to slap that in there for marketing purposes. But one of the lines of research that a lot of our professors and labs are working on is this concept of next generation batteries, and that mainly means beyond lithium. So there are limits for lithium ion batteries, and a lot of those actually come from safety issues. Yeah, so one major issue with the lithium ion is certainly the safety of the sort of almost spontaneous combustion that can occur because of what's known as thermal runaway. So you've already brought up one of the solutions to this is moving into flow batteries. So the vanadium redox batteries is one of the things you're mentioning, and that's great because what it does is it really separates the chemical components from each other within the battery. And so through that separation of the chemical components, you have a lot less safety issues with that. And also, you can just have these massive tanks of your electrolyte material, which means you can scale up the size of your battery systems to whatever you need. And so that's really great. It can be very tailored to whether you're doing a neighborhood, whether you're doing utility scale, et cetera. I think I've mainly heard of these types of flow batteries being used at the utility scale, mainly in China for now, because they're some of the early adopters for that. So that's really interesting and exciting to hear that you guys are looking into that. And you did bring up EVs. Yes, that is, of course, something that is really on the rise. Every day, it seems, I'm seeing headlines of a new major automaker company saying that they are adopting EVs into their business platform. So I think Honda is one of the latest to really say yes by 2035, I want to say, is they're going to really expand their lineup of electric vehicles. Or in 2021, that seems a little far away. So maybe they're a little behind the game there. I think by that point, Tesla will have had their electric vehicle out for nearly 2 decades or more. But it's exciting to see, these big motor companies shifting towards or finally getting on board. I think the Ford Motor Company has their pickup truck, their F-150, that's going to be all electric. And I've been saying, for friends and I have been sort of estimating or predicting for the last 3-4 years, as soon as somebody comes up with an electric pickup truck mid-size that can be used for, of course, we're very US centric with a lot of our thinking, but as you know, that's the most popular selling truck in the US. When it's in this 45,000 to 60,000 US dollar price range. If that's something that can be offered, I think that's when you're going to really see the electric vehicles take off, and that's a reality now. That's coming out next year. And so the battery connection there is the mileage, is the range, and that ultimately goes back to the energy density that you can get with these materials. And there, it's at a big disadvantage to conventional fossil fuels, unfortunately. So with gasoline and with petrol and things like that, the energy density that you can get, if we're talking about megajoules or watt hours or whatever units you want to convert it into, it's about 100 times more energy dense than a lithium ion battery. And so you're going to have much more range that you can do driving with a car on a tank of gas or something like that. But there are a lot of other factors that play into this. You don't need to always be able to drive, 1,000 kilometers in one go. And so there is a market there for those electric vehicles where, we're breaking over 600 kilometers at this point, and that is more than meeting the needs of what most commuters require. Other areas and other applications for battery storage that are coming about that have to do with energy management systems. We've been talking about local energy storage for throughout the day, or maybe used throughout the night when renewables such as solar, the sun's not shining at night, so you need some other energy generation source, as it were, and the batteries can fill that. What really needs to be looked at is on a broader scale is the seasonality storage. What we see in areas that will be relying on high wind and high solar in their electricity grid, the winter is going to be a difficult time because the angle that the sun is at during those winter times means you have less solar energy, and the winds also seem to typically slow down as well. There's a connection there with less sunlight, less temperature differences, which are causing less wind flow and things like that. And so we need to start looking at what can store electricity or energy on a longer term. You've probably been hearing people talking about hydrogen as well, as maybe one solution. I'm still a little skeptical about hydrogen because the amount of energy loss that you have converting it so many times through. So you produce the electricity, and then you produce the hydrogen from the electricity, then you store it, and then you got to convert the hydrogen back into electricity again. You're having losses at every stage there. But there are maybe some use cases for it that have to do with these longer seasonal storage type things. So yeah, there's so many different innovations coming out, and it's really exciting. And next gen batteries will have its part to play, and I'm excited if there's going to be any breakthroughs. Sorry, this is just a free form flow of consciousness. I was just reminded how I was seeing a talk that's looking at using nickel hydrogen as sort of part of the battery components, so a new electrode material within that. And the appeal of moving away from lithium ion based stuff towards something like nickel hydrogen is nickel and hydrogen are a lot cheaper, and so you can really scale down the costs compared to lithium. Lithium is also mined in very geographically distinct places. I think Australia is providing like a lot, and then of course China is also a major supplier of lithium. So if you can move away into nickel and hydrogen, which are very abundant in other places, you can get a lot of cost benefit from that. But those are technologies that may not be commercialized for 5 years or more down the road, if they even prove to be useful at the lab scale. So.
Okay. Looking to change that story or that narrative on the other source of energy, other source of storing energy, and we can utilize what's locally available to us. And that's
some of your stories of, you said, a lot of people are using generators, I'm assuming diesel generators for backup power. Yeah, do you mind sharing some stories of people that when you first approached them and said, hey, maybe solar alone or solar plus batteries, like what were some of their reactions, and did some of those people eventually adopt it and start using that? Or?
Yeah, I realized you just got to practice what you preach. So let me put it this way. Majority of Nigerians are a little bit skeptical or hesitant at first to try something different until they see the next person doing it. And they're like, oh, okay, it's working for you? Okay, let me give it a try. That's a bit of human nature, I guess. Like, I don't want to be the first one to do it. Like, who's going to do it first? So, so I completely understand where they're coming from. So what ended up happening, my business partner actually started up a small little side business of a beauty salon. And the beauty salon was being operated using solar panels. No generators, no nothing, strictly solar panels. And so when people they come into the salon and they see, it's mostly just with cut men's for men haircuts. So all you need is like your fans to be powered, your clippers to be powered, and the light systems, some audio. So yeah, okay, wow, this works out, and it cuts your operation costs. So okay, some people, and that was another place where I was having that conversation, because when you sit down there, and people are like, okay, so where's your generator? There is no generator. So yeah, people started saying, okay, this is interesting. This is, you could kind of get a feeling that people, when they see something working, then they are more receptive towards it. And we decided to, okay, we're having our 70-unit estates. Let's make it as much as possible fully off-grid. and offer renewable energy solutions. But we are using our estates to fully showcase the viability of most importantly, the storage system, the battery storage system. The solar panels aspect of it, Nigeria has an abundant amount of sunlight. Even when it's raining, there's sun. We don't have winter. Yeah, we officially we only have two seasons in Nigeria. We have dry season and then we have rainy season. And so right now we're supposed to be in rainy season. However, it's quite sunny. It's quite hot, and the city I'm in right now we're right by the coastline. So, and we don't get so much rain. Not to talk about even cities that are more further inland. So yeah, we have the natural resource of sunlight, and I feel it's something we need to tap more into. And the other aspect of the business development angle of it, renewables and business development, for me, it's like bread and butter, because everybody needs electricity, right? And no matter who you are, you need electricity. And so there's a business there, because to begin with, we don't have enough electricity in Nigeria. So it's for those who are business savvy, or for the entrepreneurs, or those who are wanting to explore something different, for where there's a demand to really key into it. And that's what we are championing, and we are looking to further develop.
When you start seeing, as you said, your neighbors or other people in your community start to use this, and you start to see not only the economic benefit, but hey, you can have a conversation without a constant loud buzzing or loud sound in the background there. Like, that's really nice. Maybe some people like the smell of burning petrol and gasoline, but maybe others, you have a little newborn kid and you don't want them smelling all those fumes, because there are side effects, there are health effects to different gases when things don't burn properly. You start inhaling those other fumes, the byproducts from that. And so there's tons of different benefits. I think going into the business side of things, I think the biggest hurdle for renewables right now, from a financial aspect, is the upfront cost of using and deploying renewables. It's very different from building, I'll talk from the perspective of like a coal power plant or something like that. Yes, there is a lot of money that's needed to build the building and all the infrastructure that goes with the coal plant. But you can say, okay, it's going to operate for 50 years or something like that. And those operation costs are really a big part of that expense portfolio. And so the investors, they only need to put up so much money up front, and then they say, okay, it's operating this long, and I'm getting a return on investment as I'm also continuing to put money into the operations of it. With a solar panel or even larger scale, a solar farm, all that money is upfront. Like, you got to pay the entire system upfront, whether that's $10,000 or 20,000, whatever size system you're looking at. I'm not sure what typical sizes you're looking at. Maybe even just a couple thousand or something. That's a lot of money to ask for upfront sometimes, especially for some of these smaller business owners. And very often, we're going month to month. We're just paying our bills. We're trying to stay in the black there and not dip into the negative. And if you need a big chunk up front like that, it's hard to see those long-term benefits. People don't pencil out and add up like, okay, yes, I have my operating cost, but what does my operating cost me over a 10-year period? And if I invest $2,000 now, and I cut those operating costs in half, at the end of 10 years, I will have saved $20,000 or something. That's difficult to grasp. So again, going to this intangibility of solar, you don't see it moving, you don't hear it working. It's difficult to see that future gain that you have. And so I really, it's this interesting abstract connection that, renewables are an investment for our future. And that means we have to put in the cost now. That's the effort, that's the money, that's the way of thinking, that's the pain of transitioning into a new world. But if people begin to understand this and start to see like, hey, this is benefiting me in the long run, it doesn't have to be about CO2 reductions. Like, obviously, I'm a big fan of that. Let's push that. But people don't necessarily see the exact impact. Like, yeah, it's getting hotter. It's supposed to be rainy season, but it's really dry right now. But I remember, 5 years back, we also had that. That's also difficult for people to grasp. So if instead we start saying like, hey, here is a tangible way in which you are benefiting, your wallet is benefiting, your customers are benefiting, your health is benefiting. If we link it to those aspects, I think that's where the education comes in, and then people begin to think more holistically, not just about their own lives, but about their community around them as well.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you on the point of when you're talking about solar farms, having that upfront cost to actually have all those panels up for the farm, and now if you can break your farm down into let's say into stages where, okay, so let's say for example you want to have 1 megawatt solar farm. So okay, before attaining that 1 megawatt, maybe look for something less, like maybe 200 watts, or half of that, and you keep on adding up incrementally, because funding for such a project, especially when you are not fully liquid, can be very very difficult, very hard. Getting investors to invest in anything is hard to begin with, and when it comes to the Nigerian setting, that's another completely other story. So yeah, when it comes to that aspect, speaking from our experience, I think I mentioned that earlier on, previously, when we were talking about what we're doing, that we'll be scaling up as we move on with the project and be adding the panels, because altogether to have roughly a 1 megawatt solar farm, we need roughly 4,000 panels, thereabout, give or take. And those 4,000 panels, it's not like we're going to be having consistently 1 megawatt energy generation. When the sun is at its highest, that's when you would eventually get that 1 megawatt, and you have different variations. So it's something that we really, really need to look at and consider. And this is where one of my favorite things that I have learned as an entrepreneur, where collaborations and partnerships comes into play. And when you speak to different, you get ideas, or you get networks. You spread out your tentacles, and you can get solutions to your problems. So I feel it's always great to have conversations with different people about what we do. No one has one idea to solve all, and no idea is so unique. Whatever you have thought of has been done somehow, somewhere before. I feel. And then maybe, except for if you're trying to go into like the Milky Way or somewhere far, far in space, and although we've gone there through our telescope, we haven't gone there physically. So I feel with how connected the world is, that we should reach out and share our stories, and definitely find solutions to problems that we're facing. And which brings me to something else that I noticed. Your
STEM wars, yeah.
STEM wars. There, I want to say STEM wares. They're like, no, it's not STEM wares. It is STEM wars. STEM wars, which also got me quite. It got me also quite interested. I found it to be fascinating, because it seems that you, aside from you being on the educational aspect, on the research aspect of the whole renewable energy, clean energy movement, you seem to also want to share stories about what you're passionate about, and also give your narrative of how and what the sector is all about. And so can you tell me more about STEM Wars? What's the backstory behind STEM Wars? What got you interested in having such a platform?
Thanks for asking about it. Yeah, it's a passion project of mine, and I love to talk, if you couldn't tell, over this past 30, 40 minutes here. So this was another way for me to feed my ego, I guess, get in front of a mic on a regular basis. But no, what I noticed was, as we humans, we like to make our lives as easy as possible, or at least try to. And in so doing, we usually create new problems for ourselves as we're trying to solve those old problems. And I think that's sort of history 101 right there. Is just us trying to survive as humans, as humanity, and finding a solution and saying, oops, we did a lot of damage when we implemented that, but hey, it's doing better now, so we're going to keep doing that, and we'll try and patch that old thing. And to that end, I think that's actually an optimistic view of humanity, that we're constantly able to change and innovate. And to do that, we need people to be those innovators, and people to think about, to not just accept the current state of things. And for me, the starting point for that is curiosity and asking questions. And that, I think, is what it is the basis of being a scientist. So I come from this science background. Neither of my parents were scientists. My dad was in sales of aircraft parts. My mom was a windsurf instructor, and also does jewelry and things like that. So I don't come from a scientific background, but both my parents are curious people. They love asking questions, and they sort of raised me to that, and that led me on this path to science. And I don't think scientists are shown that way in media. So in movies, on Facebook, in news articles, they're always shown to be this person in a white lab coat that talks with big fancy words, and you don't know what the hell they're saying, or they're the one telling you that, yeah, the zombie apocalypse is coming or something like that. And I think that's unfortunate, because scientists are normal people with normal lives. And I've met amazing scientists throughout my life where the biggest connection we had was over a beer at the end of the day, where we're just chatting about, our favorite TV shows, or we go and play football, soccer, since come from America, and things like that. And so I wanted to showcase those stories of scientists beyond the lab. Like, yes, we do a lot of cool work in the lab, and we love what we do, and we'll talk all day about that, but we're also people. And we started somewhere, and that starting point was usually curiosity. And so with STEM Wars, I'm hoping to encourage other people who think, I can't do math, I can't do physics or chemistry, like I didn't like those topics in high school or whatever education level. You don't have to be amazing at math. You just have to know to keep asking questions, and to not get afraid when you're given tough answers that bring you to more questions, and to continue asking those and continue being curious. And that's sort of the inspiration for that podcast. So.
Oh, awesome. Completely agree with you. Questions, the more questions we have, the more answers we can get, and the more problems we can solve. That's thank you on that note. Okay, if you could give one piece of advice, one piece of advice to, let's say, the younger, well, you're also young, but let's say the younger the younger generations coming up, about how to be more impactful in life, what would that advice be?
Wow, how to be more impactful. I'm glad you're not holding back on me here. That's a tough one. Yeah. Don't be afraid to put yourself in situations where you're not an expert. There's a lot of anxiety when you find yourself, whether that's with friends or in work or personal life stuff, you want to look like you know what you're doing. But that's not where you learn and grow. you learn and grow when you're in new situations. And when you're in those new situations, you will, as we've been saying, I think throughout this conversation, that's where you gain new experiences from. And hopefully that experience can be used for someone else who's looking to learn and grow as well. So put yourself into uncomfortable situations, whether that's in work, in your personal life, wherever, and try to learn. Be curious, as I was saying, and follow, see where that curiosity leads you. And yeah.
I completely agree. Ask more questions, make yourself uncomfortable. That's what leads to growth. Thank you so much, Sebastian. It was a pleasure. Hope to engage with you in the future with more questions, or also update you on what we're doing, and hopefully to get to know more about what you're up to.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for this opportunity again. And
definitely.
Yeah.
Have a great one.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.